Hello, my name is Mark Tetzloff. I'm a writing tutor up here in Coeur d'Alene for the Coeur d'Alene branch of the Lewis and Clark State College Writing Center. I'm also a social work student in the in my senior year up here. And I want to create this little video to show you how to go about citing your academic sources for an APA paper. And first of all, right here on the screen, I just created an imaginary assignment that I might be doing. You know, you always start when you do an APA, you have your title page, which the APA manual shows how to do that on page 61. You've got the title of your paper, you've got your name, you've got the department and college name. You've got the class name. Once again, this is not a real class. It's just as an illustration. You put the professor's name. Once again, this is just as an illustration. And then you put the due date. So then you get down and you're writing your paper. And you start doing your research. And you start finding articles that you like, that you think, this article will be really useful to me. And I know some people kind of start writing the paper and then try to do the citations at the end. I personally, the way I write my own papers, I take care of the citations right away, because I always feel like if you write a bunch of stuff and you don't remember where it came from, it's really hard to cite your sources later. It's really hard to go back and refine everything. I find it really valuable, even as I'm reading an article and I see stuff that's important, I'll just run over to my paper, put in a sentence, cite it, and then later on as I build my paper out, I might change the sentence, I might reword it, I might move it around, but I already have that piece of information there documented, and that's super useful, super helpful. So, I'm imagining here that I'm writing a paper that relates to the strength-based approach, because that is something that we work with a lot in social work. So, quick note, a lot of people I know don't necessarily use or start with the Lewis and Clark State College library resources. They'll use Google or something else because they feel like that's easier. And while that I know works for a lot of people, I think I personally always go straight to the library resources, and part of that is I have had a lot of appointments with librarians in the past, and they have showed me how to effectively use the library resources. And it is very worthwhile to talk to a librarian if you are struggling with using the library resources, if you're not finding good articles, because you can get really high quality sources if you know how to use the library resources. If you just use Google, a lot of times it's harder to find as high a quality resources, and that can cost you time and effort later. It can make it harder to do the paper. It can make it harder to cite your sources. There's a lot of advantages, I personally believe, in using the library resources. You just do have to know how to effectively do it, and that is what the librarians are there to help you with. One other thing, and this is, okay, we're going to get into citations, but I just want to throw in another thing that I think is really valuable. When you're given an assignment to write an APA paper, there's certain components you will be required to have in that assignment, such as an introduction that introduces your audience to your topic. You'll be a lot of times required to have like a brief overview of the history of the topic. You'll oftentimes be required to have a literature review that goes over other literature, what other people have said about the topic. And then you'll sometimes you're just writing a literature review, sometimes that's all you're doing, but sometimes you might be building your own argument, your own perspective based on the research. And you'll have something you want to convey about the topic. And let me kind of give you a cheat here, something that will be super helpful to you. Every single peer-reviewed journal article that you read has to follow similar guidelines. In other words, all the components that your professor is asking you to put in your paper is what every other author of an APA paper has to do as well. And that means every single article you find on the topic, it's going to have an introduction that gives a summary. It'll also have an abstract too, which is kind of like an introduction. But most of the time in your papers, you don't have to do abstracts probably. But so there's the abstract and the introduction. And then it's going to usually have a brief overview of history. It's going to have a brief overview of what other authors and researchers have said on the topic. And what that means is, let's say you find 5 articles that you're going to use to write your paper. Well, every single one of them is probably going to have a section where they give an overview of the history of that topic. It means when you're having to write in your paper about the history of the topic, you've just got 5 sources there. All 5 of those articles all will probably say something about the history of it, because that's what you do in an APA paper. And so you can use all 5 of those sources, and you can cite all 5 of those sources usually as you write your paper. And a lot of times, I think students don't necessarily know that, and so they might try to find like one article that talks about the history, and then they'll cite that one article in the history section, and then they might be like, okay, let's find an article that talks about this, and so they might try to have like 5 articles and want to use like one article for each section in the paper. And it's like most of the time, if you find 5 articles, those 5 articles will have applicability in almost every section of the paper, and your paper will come across much better if you are citing multiple sources in each section. And because every single APA paper you're reading has to follow these guidelines, has to cover certain topics, it is applicable in almost every section. So it's just encouragement to remember, as you look at articles, be looking for all those components in the article that you're reading and make use of that. Okay, so now for citing a source. So here's an article I found on the LC website, the library resources, and it relates to strength-based approach, which I said was my topic. And let's say I start reading this. You know, a lot of times you start reading at the beginning, you start looking at it, and let's say you're like, oh, this is useful. This is something I want to cite. Well, so you want to cite it. What you can do is, you see over here, almost every journal article that you get through here, somewhere on the page, it depends on the database, but somewhere there it's going to have a little button that says cite. And so you hit that button that says cite, and then you have to scroll down and you have to find APA. Okay, here it says APA 7th edition. And you probably have had professors who tell you not to use citation generators. And technically, this is a citation that has been generated by the website. And so you'll have professors who say, don't use those. But basically what they're telling you is they are telling you that they want to see you have your citations correct. And most of the time, these computer-generated ones are not entirely correct because the computer did it. They're not as smart as you are. And so in order for you to come up with the citation, you need certain information. And so these citations here are still super useful to you because they contain the information you will need to make the citation, even if you can't use them directly. So I highlighted this here. I'm going to hit Control-C to copy it, and then I'm going to go back to my document here, and we're going to go down to the last page here, which is the references page. And I'm going to hit Control-V. I'm going to paste it. Well, actually, what I should do is I want to paste it without formatting because a lot of times weird formatting comes in. And remember I said that a lot of times these aren't right. Well, let's go pull out your APA manual and go to page 283. That is the page that tells you how to how to create a reference for your reference section for work. And the important thing to remember is that in a citation, in an APA citation, the components are, first of all, you're going to write who said it, who wrote it, who did it. Then you're going to say when, that's the year. Then you're going to say what, that's the name of the article. And then you're going to say where was it found. So who, when, what, where. Who, when, what, where. That's the key for every APA reference. Now, I look here and I copy this in and I immediately see that there's a problem here because the name is written in all capitals. That is not correct. It's supposed to, so I need to correct that. And in APA, if you're looking at page 283 in your manual, you have the last name written first. For first letter capitalized, rest small. You have a comma, and then you have the initial of the first name and the middle name if a middle name is provided. In this one, we can go back. This one, it only shows one initial. We can go back to our document. Okay, the first name was provided, no middle initial was provided. So we only have one initial. You have a period after initial, and then you have when. That's the year, 2023. And the reason is because in APA, you're citing research, and whoever's reading your research wants to know, is this research from the 1940s and it's not good anymore because new research has superseded it, or is this actually applicable research? Let's say you did some research on recidivism for inmates. Okay, I've been doing research on that, so it's on the top of my mind. Let's say I get some data about after reentry, there's like a 30% recidivism rate. It's like, well, is that what the rate was in 1920 or in 1960 or today in 2023? It's like whoever's reading my document wants to know when. So that's why APA prioritizes the date. So you have the name, that's who it is, who the author is. You have when, the date, when the research was done, when the article was written. And then you have what? Okay, this is the name of the article, increased belongingness through a strength-based approach. Oh dear, we've got a problem here because in an APA reference, the title of the article is supposed to be in sentence case. That means only proper nouns or the first word in the sentence is supposed to be capitalized. So we got to go through, we got to make the capitals small. And if there was a capital noun in there, like let's say we said United States, we would leave United States capitalized or something like that. Or if there was like a semicolon and then it started a new sentence, a colon. A lot of times there's titles with a colon. They're like two-part titles. So you we may get an example like that. But then let's go back and look at our article here. You see this section that says diverse issues in higher education. That is where it was published. You see it down here under source. That is the publication it was in. Volume 40, issue 8. So we'll go back here. The publication is always supposed to be in italics, as is the volume. So diverse issues in higher education, volume 40, and then in parentheses is the issue. Most of these publications have like 12 issues if they're published monthly, so you'll be anywhere from 1 to 12 there. And then we need the pages. Now look, this is page 40. Let's see if that's correct. Okay, it says page 40 to 40. You know what? That is accurate. It's also a red flag. You see this article I found here? It is like 1 page long. Most professors aren't going to like that. Even if this is a peer-reviewed journal article, if it's only 1 page, it's not really the type of source a lot of professors are looking for. Usually we will have like 40 to 62. We'll have a much longer article. Once again, this is just an illustration, but when you're doing your sources, make sure you have a substantial article there. And then we're also missing something. We usually always need a DOI, which is like a link. This source right here, you know, it would have been easier for me if I had found a source that had the DOI, but hey, you're going to run into this. Some sources, they don't seem to provide the DOI, but they do provide they still provide a link. For some reason, this source, you know, I said the citation generators usually aren't right. In APA, they don't provide it. But you can look at some of these others and they do provide a link. Whatever you do, don't go to the top of your browser, highlight the link that it says you're on and use it, because that link usually won't work. You can either, if it doesn't have a DOI, you can get a permalink. You can click permalink and it will provide a link. Or what's better in this situation is we go back to where it said cite, and you'll notice that they provided a link with the beginning with the HTTPS and some of the other options, even though they didn't provide it for the APA. So there, you've got your link. You go back to your document. You put, well, you need to paste with no formatting so it doesn't mess up your formatting. And then you've got a link there. So that's a really good reference there. We've got the name, who, we got when, the year, we've got the title, what, and then we got where. The publication, the volume, the issue, and the page number, and then the link, so that they can click it and go right to that article. And then now we need to be able to put our in-text citation. So what I like to do is I like to create, so in APA there are two kinds of in-text citations you're going to do. One is called narrative citation and one is called parenthetical citation. So in your citation, let's create a parenthetical citation first. For a parenthetical citation, you have the author and the date, who and when. And let me tell you where this is in your APA manual. The information on how to do this is in your APA manual on page 262. If you go there, it shows the correspondence between reference list entry and an in-text citation. And a parenthetical citation has the name, a comma, and 2023. Or well, the date, whatever that happens to be. A narrative citation has the name, and then it has the date. Let me explain how this is used. Let's say I say something like, So here I make a statement. The strength-based approach has been demonstrated to be highly effective. Kinney 2023. Let me quickly fix my formatting here. In the body of your paper, you're always supposed to have the indent there. So I can say the same thing in narrative citation. Kinney 2023 asserts that the strength-based is highly effective. And so there I made the same statement in parenthetical citation and in narrative citation. And a lot of people, when they're new to this, will just do parenthetical. They'll just make their statements and then they will put the citation at the end. But if you make use of narrative citations, it really takes the paper up a notch. It's good to use both, not just use only one or only the other. It really helps out the flow and the layout to kind of go back and forth, use both depending on what seems to fit the best. Now, what I want to do here is I want to explain what you would do if in some different situations. So let's go back. Let me try to find a different article here. Let's look for a different article. Okay, here's one that has two authors. So I want to show you what it's like to have an article with two authors. And this one is a more substantial article. Now this one, in order to actually view it, you have to click full PDF. So let's click it and see what happens when we do that. Okay, this brings up the whole article here, and you can read through the whole thing. And this, once again, it still has the little button on the side that I can click that says Cite. You can go down, I can find my APA 7 article or reference. Hey, look, this one has the DOI, which is really good. I hit Control C. I come back here. Well, let's quickly look at the name. This name, the last name is Potter. That's the first one listed. So let's go back here. P comes after K, so it's going to come after this because it's alphabetical. Paste without formatting. And let's make this one right. Now, first of all, you see the names here? Look at this one that says Mark. Is Mark usually a last name? Not usually. So we're going to go investigate here. Something's probably wrong. Well, surprisingly, it looks like Mark is a last name. So it's always good to check that because it isn't always what we think. But it looks like the second author, her first name is Monica and the second name is Mark. So, wow. My first name is Mark, but I never knew Mark could be a last name, but it looks like it can be. So that looks correct. Look, we've got the last name, the initial, period, you put a comma because there's a second one. You have an and sign. You have Mark, M, and then we have who, the two authors. We have when. We got the date there. That's good. And then we have the title. Oh, wow. This one actually got it right. The title is in sentence case. That's really good. And then we got the publication. The publication is Assessment and Development Matters, Volume 14, Issue 3. Let's go double check and make sure that's right. Make sure, as I look at the article, Assessment and Development Matters, Volume 14, Issue 3. You see it at the bottom there, 2022. It looks like that's all correct. Pages 42 to 48. Let's double check the pages. Like the last page here is 48. Okay, we're good. And then we've got the link here. It's actually a DOI, which is what is ideal. And then let's make it an active link by hitting space after it. It's an active link now. Okay, so let me go show you what two authors looks like. in narrative and parenthetical. So so what we want to do here is for parenthetical, you never have the initials, and here we have Potter and Mark. Your APA manual is the go-to. So you might ask the question, well, do I need a comma after Potter? And you can just look in your APA manual, and we can see that you do not have a comma there. There's illustrations on page 263. You can see that when you have the and in between, there's no comma there, but you do have a comma after the second author before the 2022. So we might have something like strength approach is effective in empowering employees. Potter and Mark, 2022. That's a parenthetical citation. We can also say, according to Potter and Mark, 2023. Oh, actually 2022. I always want to make sure you get the date right. Effective and empowering employees. Okay, so right there, we did a narrative citation. According to Potter and Mark, comma, or 2022, comma, the strength-based approach is effective in empowering employees. Now let's go back and find a source that has multiple authors, like more than two. I want to quickly show you how to do that. Oh, here's one, strengthening health, promotion, development. Okay. That one, I don't even know if it's about the strength-based perspective, but maybe we can use this one as an illustration. We have 4 authors there. This one, we don't need to open the PDF to do it. We'll click the Cite button. We'll find the APA 7 citation. It's got all our information in it. We'll go back to our document. Well, first, okay, S is the last name, the first author listed. So we'll go down here. Oh, S comes after P, so we're going to put it at the end. Once again, always paste without formatting, helps your document out. Okay. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's double check at our document here and just double check those names. Okay, first names, make sure they put the last names. Okay, looks like they did it right. We've got the initials. Oh, look, Smith here. If you look back at the original document, Smith here has a middle initial, so that's why you have 2 initials there. Everyone else only gave the first name initial. We got the date, 2022. So who, when, what, strengthening health, promotion, development with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander males in remote Australia, colon, a Northern Territory perspective. And then Australian Journal of Rural Health, volume 30 is in italics. Issue 4, got the page numbers, and then we've got the DOI, which is the link. Now, going back here to the title, the what, Strengthening health. Remember I said this is supposed to be in sentence case, so we want to review this. It looks like they're doing it in sentence case, but they capitalized Aboriginal. Okay, that's a proper noun. Then they have Torres Strait Islander. I'm probably not pronouncing that right, but okay, they capitalized that. That is a proper name. Okay, so that looks good. Australia. Okay, Australia should be capitalized because it's a capital noun. And then they have the colon. And yes, you do capitalize after the colon. That's like, it's like a new sentence. And then, okay, Northern Territory is also a name. So it should be capitals. But then perspective isn't, so it's small. This is a really complicated one. It's incredible to me that it's actually done right in here because this is like a minefield. Usually they give it to you at all capitalized and you would have to go through and decide which ones needed to be small, but then maintain the capitals on the ones that should be capital. So this one quite amazingly was done right here. Australian Journal of Rural Health, those are always in title case. Those are always capitals, the publication names are, so that's good. And then, okay, that looks good. Now, how are we going to do our in-text and parenthetical citation? Let's go up to our document. And when you have more than two authors, you only list the first one, and then you follow up with et al. And so we can also do okay, there you go. And a quick change, you don't put the comma before the et al. I know that is because I just looked at my APA manual, and APA manual illustrations says no comma after the name when you do the et al. And some of this is like your APA manual, that's the go-to source. Like for me, it's like, oh, do you put the comma there or not? Well, I look at the APA manual, that's how I know, because otherwise it's a little surprising. It might make sense to you that you put the comma before the et al, and then it's like, oh, look at here, you got a period and then a comma, and it's like, well, that might look a little kludgy, but no, you look at your APA manual, you see how they do it, and that's how you do it. And so you always have the comma. Well, okay, in this one you have the comma after the period before 2022. And this one you won't necessarily, because if you say according to, if you say according to Souter et al., you'll have a comma after the 2022. If you say Souter et al. Says, then you won't need the comma there. For the narrative citation, or for the parenthetical citation, we might say you finish your sentence and then you cite it. And so there, let's sum it up quickly. It's a kind of long video, but I wanted to walk you through all these different situations. So first of all, you learned about narrative and parenthetical citation. Narrative citation is like this one here, Kennedy 2003 asserts. And then we looked at parenthetical, where you just put the citation at the end. We looked at what to do if you have two names, you have the and sign in between. But if you do it as a narrative citation, you actually write out and instead. And then we looked at what to do if there's more than two authors in the article. You'd use the et al, and I showed you how that's used both in narrative and parenthetical. And then I want one final point here. If you are so in APA, most of your professors will discourage you from ever using direct quotes. You're not supposed to just fill your paper with quotes of other articles. You're supposed to know how to paraphrase. You're supposed to know how to read the other article, understand what it says, and then write it in your own words, but still cite it. That's the preferred method, and that's what we want to do. And APA says that when you do that, the APA manual says you do not need to record page numbers. If you are quoting it and you have quotation marks on it, well, then you do need page numbers. And if you were doing that, you'd go up here after the date, you put a comma, and then you'll have pay dot. Well, quick thing, let's see if the APA manual, yeah, APA says you have a dot after the P and then you put in your page number, whatever it is. Or if it's multiple pages, PP dot 10 through 12. You put in your page numbers. And Kenny 2023, let's say I put in here, I say says, and then I'm going to quote. Let's say this is a quote. The way the APA manual says to do it is that then you put the page numbers at the end. Once again, any questions about that, just look at the APA manual under the section called in-text citations, which is a green tab about starting on page 253, and that section goes all the way through page 278, and it's all about how to do the in-text citations. Now, having explained how to do it, how to put the page numbers in if you do a citation, I will also put in a caveat that there are professors at LCSC who put it in their specific instructions that you are to put page numbers even if you're not quoting. And so and that's just an extra thing they want you to do because they want to know that you actually read the assignment. I mean, that you actually read the article, that you're not just citing people that might not even be talking about what you're actually writing about. They want to make sure you're actually doing the work. And so they have you put page numbers in so they can go back and look at your source and see what you're actually looking at. And if that's the case, just do that. Put the page numbers in even when you're not quoting the source. And once again, you'll always go to after the date, put the comma in, put the P dot or PP dot, and then put your page numbers. And that's how you do that. So anyway, that's hopefully that's very helpful to you. It's a thorough look at how I would go about doing citations. It's like as soon as I find an article that I want to use, I go put it in my reference section, and then I oftentimes will make a parenthetical citation that I can copy and paste in, and I also know how to do the narrative citations for every time I do the narrative citation. So instead of the and sign, I put and, or yeah, I know how to do that too. And so it's really helpful to just have those citations made. You put it somewhere in your document and you can copy and paste it in wherever you need it. And then just do lots of citations. It's like the professors like citations. If you have multiple sources you're citing from paragraph to paragraph, especially if you have multiple sources for the same paragraph, that really builds on your credibility and it makes for a really good paper. Well, I hope you have a great semester and that you found this video useful. Bye.